podcast. I hope you're up for it. We'll see if I can nail it this time, all right? We're always talking about my time frames. Genesis 22:2. I'm calling this an only precious life. Take your son. Now, this is Abraham in the book of Genesis. And God is talking to Abraham. And he says to Abraham, take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will show you. Now, my tea. The word only son in the Hebrew is the word Yasheed. It refers to an only one, an only child, a precious life. And Yasheed comes from the verb yachad, means to be one. This is a miracle child. And it describes Abraham's son, born to him and Sarah in old age. Abraham was like 100, Sarah was like 90, and they hadn't had children. They were sexually dead, and yet God brought life out of death when he caused Sarah to be able to become pregnant and have this only child of the promise. The only child of the promise. Abraham had another child through Hagar, Sarah's servant. But that was trying to have a child our way, their way in the flesh. And that's not the way God wanted it done. God had promised that Sarah was going to have this child in old age, and she did, and it's Isaac. And now God is saying, offer your Yasheed, your only son, your precious, your miracle child. Offer him on the mountains of Moriah as a sacrifice. And so, of course, the story is Abraham does, and Abraham's ready to sacrifice Isaac, and God intervenes and sees Abraham's faith, that Abraham was willing to even give up his only Yasheed, his only son of the promise, son of their old age, the miracle child. But God intervened when he saw Abraham's faith, that Abraham was really going to go through with it. And it's really interesting because the hills of Moriah, now here's the cool thing about this passage. The hills of Moriah is the general area, the mountains around Jerusalem, where Jesus, God's only son, God's miracle child, God's precious life, God's New Testament Yasheed, was to be sacrificed on those very hills. And so, what a moving, interesting story, the connection between Abraham and Isaac and God the Father and Jesus. We call that in theology a type, that Isaac, the son of the promise, is a type of the Lord Jesus Christ. He's not Christ, of course, but he's a type. There's a symbolism because he was Abraham's Yasheed, offered on the mountains. And of course, in this case, God intervened because Abraham showed faith. And then many years later, on the hills of Moriah, Jesus, God's miracle child, was offered as the sacrifice and went through with it to secure our salvation. And of course, what that means for me is that there are times when we are called to make sacrifices in our life of things that might be special to us, things that might have been a miracle to us, and yet God might be calling us to give up those things or to sacrifice those things in pursuit of what He might be calling us to do. So I hope you find this study really interesting and cool. It's called An Only Precious Life, found in Genesis 22:2. Hey, I hope this really gets you jump-started for a great week. Have a terrific week this week, and we'll catch up with you next week.